Welcome back, Spokane, to another episode of EvoReal Talks. I am your host, Jessica Side, and I'm with my co-host, Matthew Side.
Matthew again.
I know. Sorry.
Matthew again.
It's okay.
I'm probably in trouble, and I just don't even know it.
Well, that's true. Okay, so we now are on week 5 of our Airbnb.
I personally have lost track, so I'm glad that you're keeping track of it.
I'm hoping that this is helpful. Here's the deal. I know if any of you are out there are considering this, you are just...
This absolutely will be helpful. I wish we had something like this.
You're eating this up. And I will say that this is going to be... We're going to give you as much good information as possible. There's also a lot of good information out there, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit, but you can go and find some really great places that will just give you a bunch of information. And you have to sift through that on what's right for you and what's not.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not all... Yeah.
So last week we finished with Matt talking about we're setting up Airbnbs, and we were talking about pricing and availability.
Setup.
Let's do that. Let's go back to that, and then we're going to kick it over to me.
Okay. So let's just do a super fast review. We're in the pricing and availability section of platform setup.
Yes.
So number 1, you should know kind of your goal rate that you're going to charge, and we talked about that all the way back when we were running numbers on whether or not this was a good real estate investment. Then you're going to price high for the shorter stays, like a 1-night, 2-night stay, with discounts to try and encourage longer stays.
Right.
This all comes back to your goal. Like if your goal is to have like a whole month, then you're going to have a really high a really high rate for even maybe a 4-day or a 5-day stay, because you're really trying to get a big discount for the smaller stays.
Staying there for a long period of time.
The moment somebody grabs a partial, and this happened to us over the Thanksgiving holiday, is that somebody grabbed Friday and Saturday. I'm like, oh crap, they just stole Thanksgiving.
Right.
Because now whoever wants to stay there the night before I was thinking
Wednesday,
somebody...
Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Totally, a 4-day weekend, right? And then now all of a sudden we've got Thanksgiving out here as this widow, or an orphan. I don't know what you call that. Probably an orphan.
That basically just means a day that's by itself that no one is going to want to choose
So it could be a widow or an orphan.
Well, that's horrible. All those things. It's just a dangling participle. Let's just use that.
Okay, the dangling participle of your calendar. All right. Number 3 was timing on reduction. On the reduction or reducing of your prices per night.
You did it. You did the English language.
Man. All right, so that we talked about the difference between large properties and small properties. Anything over 10 people I would consider large. Anything fewer than that I would consider small. Your large properties should be filling up 30 to 45 days out.
Or even further
at a minimum.
In advance.
Like you should start getting not worried, but you should start bringing your prices down pretty significantly if they're not full by that point.
Let me just explain to you why. Because if it's 10 people, there are very few families that are 10 people, and that's possible. But most of the time, that's going to be 2 separate family groups coming together, or even more. There are places that have, sleep 18. And while you might have 3 or 4 family groups, they're not going to go, hey guys, let's all go this weekend to such and such. They're going to be planning, hey, in the spring, let's do a thing together. So what we're saying is that you're going to need to start dropping your prices at some point. The larger properties need to drop those prices much further out than smaller properties, because people will go, hey, hun, let's go to that place for the weekend, and it might just be a week away. Well, you don't want to be dropping your prices on those small places 30 or 45 days out, because you're going to lose a ton of revenue.
Closer to that 2 weeks. So that's the timeline on the...
Hope that makes sense to everybody.
If not, ask a question. We'll answer those questions. Number 4, review pricing multiple times a week. So that just makes sure you're on top of it. And then last, know your high demand weekends or weeks and price those accordingly. The example I gave last week was Christmas in Leavenworth is totally different than spring break in Leavenworth. They don't have the same draw.
Right.
And that was kind of leading into where we want to come back to today.
Yeah, so I just had one thing I wanted to say as well. So everybody knows about holidays, and you should know, are the holidays in where we are high demand, because sometimes they're not going to be, but also you need to know community demand. In other words, are there special things that happen? during that time in this town or this city that maybe you don't know about because you're not from there and you need to pay attention to. Like in Spokane, Hoop Fest, Bloomsday. These are two really, really big weekends that you got to make sure don't be pricing those super low because there's such a high demand. You could get a lot more for that weekend. And if you don't know Spokane, then you're not going to know that.
Sure.
And that's the same thing that's true for any community. Maybe they've got apple picking weekend and it's a really popular time of year for people to come, or maybe somebody's got Groundhog's Day that's a big deal. I don't know. You just have to watch for those community activities and events.
And going to, so, where are some of the places you can find these, some of the community calendars, chambers of commerce, those type of, and if you call the Chamber of Commerce, they can probably point you in the right direction if they don't have like a calendar like that. But if you let them know, so that's important. I agree with that because different communities are going to have different things and you should price
for sure
based on that. All right. So that is all on pricing and availability. Let's move into policies. So this is, again, reminding you, we're setting up our platform. So your policies then have to go into those individual platforms so that you can hold people accountable.
When we talk about platforms, we're talking about Airbnb, VRBO, or Vrbo. Those are the two main
there's
ones
Booking.com. There are other platforms out there, but I think if you focus on those two, Expedia owns VRBO, so
but don't they have a platform you can use?
Yeah, probably. I mean, they do. Those are mostly hotels. If you're on, so this is, I guess, is a little tip. If you're on VRBO and you do Instant Book, it automatically blows out to Expedia, Hotels.com, and all of their other platforms.
Okay.
Because those hotel specific type platforms anticipate not having to like make a request for reservation.
Right.
And so if you'll do the Instant Book, which is them enticing you to do so, you're going to get a way bigger
swath of people.
Group of people that are looking at that. All right, let's talk about policies. The first thing I want to talk about is cancellation policy. My encouragement to you is to not be too strict. And if this is the first time that you've done a nightly rental, your temptation and fear is going to be that they're going to cancel on me and then I'll never get that back again. The problem is if you make your policy too strict, they're never going to reserve in the first place because they're worried about that. And this is not just a COVID thing. This is an always thing, but COVID has probably exacerbated that a little bit. So, there within the Airbnb platform, and as I was writing this, they were changing it. So I will actually be going in to change my own Airbnb policy. But
it's nice because they don't just have a toggle. It's not like good one or bad one. It is lots of different tiers, and I'm sure we're going to talk about what these tiers are.
I'm not going to go into all of them. I'm just going to tell you my favorites. You can literally go through and figure it out on your own. Like, you don't need me to tell you what the different ones are. So the ones strict or firm are the two that are my favorites in the Airbnb platform. So strict has no penalty for cancellation in 48 hours after the reservation is made.
Okay.
And then you only get 50% back if you cancel up until 7 days before the reservation, and then nothing back after that.
Okay.
That is the one that we chose when we first set up.
Right.
Firm is the new version of that. So it's a little bit more, it allows for longer term people to go out. So let me just read it.
I don't understand.
That didn't make any sense at all.
Okay, read it then.
A firm refund is a full refund before 30 days.
Okay.
So instead of you have 48 hours if you don't like this to get out of the deal, they're saying up until 30 days, it's a full refund. And then it goes back to basically exactly what strict was, which is 50% if before 7 days and nothing after that 7 days.
I see.
So the benefit of that is it's going to encourage longer term,
further out,
more planning, that further out planning, so that if I'm doing something in February, for example, I might not really know all that's going on in February, which it would discourage me from making that reservation that far in advance if I'm only going to get half my reservation back if something happens.
Right.
And it doesn't even have to be a bad thing. Maybe we have a kid that joins a sports team that all of a sudden makes the playoffs.
Right.
And we don't know about that until January, and now we can still get our money back. Which then us as a host, and for this smaller unit,
right?
Like, I'm like, well, whatever. 30 days out, that'll be disappointing, but it will be. It's not as impacting because I would anticipate we'll get other people.
And so again, these choices are based on the kind of Airbnb you have. Because if you've got one of those ones where it is 18 people canceling 30 days out is kind of a big deal because it's going to be hard to get that thing re-rented because, again, people need to plan in advance for those large places.
I would argue that the other side of that is it's less likely for a large group event like that to cancel that even 30 days out, right? Okay. Because if you think about it, who is that? That's multiple families. Right. It's a family reunion with people coming from all over the place. I've
also seen it where even if one family cancels, the other three will still do it.
Yes, so they'll figure out somebody else that can take their place. So I think that the risk is lower for all of scenarios in that regard. Mm-hmm. So that's just my thought on that.
And we're guessing, just so you know. I mean, listen, we have stayed in a lot of Airbnbs over the years in a lot of different places.
We are highly educated when it comes to being a guest.
Guest-wise, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay.
All right, so the next thing I want to talk about in policies is the instant book. You don't have to turn it on. And this is specifically around the Airbnb platform. You can turn it on only with certain criteria. So the choice I made is that it's instant book if they have verification of identification, email, and phone number. And if they have all of those things, and the other thing is they have to have reviews.
Oh, okay.
So you can choose all of these things when you say, I want to do instant book, but I only will do instant book for people that meet all of these criteria.
Right.
And so we've chosen a review, verification. I think there might be a minimum number of stars on their review because they have a review, if it's a 1-star review,
not good.
I can't remember that piece of it off the top of my head. Okay. So reviews, ID, phone, and email, like all of those are all the ones that I will do. And then it will allow them, if they have all those criteria, they click the button for the dates that are open and it will automatically move the ball forward.
Wonderful.
If not,
low barrier of entry for them.
Any of those things are not there, then it will send a request that says John Doe has requested these dates to check in. And anytime I see something from Airbnb that's saying this is a request, they're either requesting a discount on what I've posted, and they're saying, hey, would you consider a lower price? So it's that's more of a message to me. And then I have some options inside of Airbnb on how I want to respond to that. We might have time in the future to talk about that. But or there's one of those pieces missing, and then I have to make a decision on
if you're going to be okay
what
with
I'm going to do with that. Most of the time, it's a review, honestly. So they've got, because it's easy to get your phone number and your ID and all that stuff verified. But if they don't have a review, then it's going to kick it up to me, and then I have kind of a series of quick, non-threatening questions to try and pull out from them, like, well, hey, why don't you have a review? Are you brand new to the platform and you've never stayed with anybody?
Sure.
Anyway,
you just open a dialogue.
Yeah, who's going to actually be there with you? I will see, because they'll also tell me like what their plan is, kind of when they're requesting to book, because it's not going to give them the instant book option because they don't qualify for it.
Right.
So anyway, so the instant book option. For VRBO, they have that as well. They do not have the same, and that's the difference. That's
they don't have the same verification.
It's why hosts like Airbnb better than VRBO, because they don't have the ID verification. They don't have the minimum. I don't even think you get to review people on VRBO as the host. So we don't even know. The last place these people stayed, did they trash it?
Right. Interesting.
So, the last thing on my policies is your house rules. My advice is be very specific. Use all of the pre-filled options that the platform gives you. And it's the, no pets, no smoking, those type of things. And they're usually yes or no toggles. And then dig into anything else. So some of the things like on ours, like we have a couch that Jessica was very concerned, and rightly so, that somebody would have a wet swimsuit on and just leave, a butt print all over the leather. So those are type of things that I put into the house rules. No wet clothing on the couch. No sharp objects on the couch. So we have them kind of in different categories. Things like hot items on the table. And so you just kind of think of what are the potential likely damages that could be done, and you put them in those house rules. And you talked last week or the week before about some of when you were talking about party houses last week, like some of those, they have like bodily fluids, and if that is there, then there's an extra fee for that. Or if this other
like
thing
a
happens,
$250 fee if they find any bodily fluids on the property.
Yeah, and it's same with the couch, right? If there's damage to the couch, they're going to be charged a $200 fee plus the cost of the cleaning fee or whatever that is. So just kind of build some of those things in, because if it's in your house rules and you find a problem, then you can put a request for payment out to your guest.
But it's not in the house rules. There can be an issue.
Well, here's what happens. You put the request out to the guest, and they have 72 hours to agree to pay it or not. And if they don't, and it comes back, then at that point, there's a little thing on there that says, please submit this to Airbnb if you need us to get involved, kind of a thing.
Right.
And so if it's not in your guest rules or your house rules,
it's going to be harder.
It will be more difficult.
And I know this because I've been on some like Facebook groups, and that has been the two things that they say: make sure it's in your house rules, and that you have verification that they saw your house rules, and take a security deposit. Those are the two big things when anybody brings up kind of damage. That they say, make sure you do these two things.
So the last thing I have when comparing the platforms is just a couple of the nuances for VRBO, the setup differences. In general, they might look different, but for the most part, they're similar. The house rules don't exist very much detail in the VRBO. It's the rental agreement. So creating a rental agreement that's in there, you can check that. It's something that they have to say that they've seen before. We send that out after the booking, and we say, hey, here's a copy of the rental agreement. We message them, we're going to be sending to your email the rental agreement for electronic signature, so that hopefully we can get that back from them and have even that much more. Like if something bad happens, we're like, well, listen, not only did you see it when you reserved, but then you got a second time a copy and you signed it.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that's different. And then we already talked about kind of verification of identification.
Where did you get a rental agreement for this?
I just copied the house rules and said rental agreement.
Okay.
I mean, it's not really a rental agreement.
I think that's helpful for people, because I'm sure some people are going, I don't know where to get that. Like,
it's not a rental agreement. I mean, I'm not trying to get into landlord-tenant law and have a long-term. It's basically the house rules with a nightly rental agreement at the top of it that says, here are the rules for renting this property.
Right.
And one of the very first things we say is that within a certain period of time to show valid government ID. So technically, if we waited till the last minute and they didn't give that to us, then we could potentially have the leverage of, well, we're going to have to cancel your reservation if we don't get a copy of your ID, because you did agree to doing that at the beginning.
Right. Okay, well, that's helpful. That's helpful for you all to know what this rental agreement is.
Thanks for asking the question.
Yeah, you're welcome. Are you done?
That is all I had with platform setup.
Okay, perfect. And
again, if you want the detail, and you probably will want to when you're actually setting a property up, search it on YouTube, and then you can just kind of look through some of those how-to videos.
And they'll do a screenshot, and they'll just walk you through the whole thing. And some of them will be a little outdated because they change their platform and they update their platform a lot, but it'll be close enough that you'll be able to figure it out.
If you just come back to the simplicity of fill everything out, then then look at it, have somebody else look at it, have them go. They'll let you do a link to what it looks like to the world, and just make sure it looks good.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So we are now going to get into what I am calling setting up the Airbnb itself. He's talking about platforms. I'm talking about the physical property.
This is exciting. This has to do with hanging lights and pictures and
well, that's what you do.
Rolling out.
He hangs lights and pictures.
Area rugs.
His job. So the first things that so let me just tell you what this is going to entail, and it's probably going to take a couple weeks to get through. So first, I'm going to tell you about the questions that I asked myself. Okay, questions that I asked myself. Then I'm going to talk about my process, like my physical process of organizing my thoughts around all of my answers to the questions. Okay. Then I'm going to talk about the shopping list, because there is a shopping list that you have to put together. Then I'm going to talk about the guest book and tags. Okay? Tags and signs. I'm going to kind of talk about those two things. Okay?
Those are exciting. I love
the signs.
So
the first thing we're going to get into is questions, and it's probably all we're going to get to this week. Okay? So the question first is, What kind of owners are we? Right? We talked about owners, and
We're amazing owners.
Oh my gosh.
I'm in trouble because I'm taking her off her jam here.
What kind of owners are we? We are combo owners. Okay, we want to use the property for our personal use. However, we can't just afford it on our own. So we are forced into becoming very professional about our Airbnb because we want it to be a place that can also help us pay for the place, right? So that's who we are. Now, what type of Airbnb do we have? So this is kind of funny. I realized as I went back through the type of Airbnb that we have, I actually don't have a type that really matches us. So I've made a new type, and that is condo in a resort, because it is different than other things. And it's
it's a good distinction because there are quite a few condos in resorts, from ski mountains to...
And they have amenities built in, okay? And so there's something to that is, I think, extremely helpful in what you got. Okay, so those are the first two questions that you have to ask yourself, and you got to answer, who you are and what kind of Airbnb you have. All right, so here are some of the other questions that you have to ask yourself. How many people will stay here? Oh, that's an interesting one. Okay, so the answer to us was a maximum of 6 people.
Yeah, but I want 8. We could throw them on the floor. Is it okay if we have 8?
No,
the answer is no. I'm asking that question because within days of us putting our Airbnb up, people were asking that question. I was like, I don't know, maybe. I mean, could they throw some extra kids on the floor or whatever?
And what we decided is the answer to that is no. We're not going to do that. And so because of all the other questions that we have to ask ourselves, the first one, you may have to answer that a little bit later. We know at this point it's a maximum of 6. Okay, and we'll talk more about that. All right. So, because the next question is, where will they eat? All right. So we have a dining room table and we have an eating bar. That eating bar only seats 2 people. It's a small dining room. So I could have put 4 chairs and then had 2 people sitting at the bar. But I decided, what if they all want to sit around one table and they want to play a game, do a puzzle, maybe they want to eat together? I wanted to create that space in the dining room. So what I did is I added 2 benches. So we have 2 bench seats that seat 2 on 2 sides and then 2 chairs. Okay, so that's one of the ways that we were able to solve that. But we still also, if people want to spread out a little bit, they've got the bar that they can sit at as well. Okay, so where will they watch TV as a group? If this is the kind of Airbnb that people are going to sit down and watch a movie, because not all of them are like that, right? Like if you've got a crash pad, it may not be that we're coming back to the hotel room or the Airbnb to watch a movie. We're going to maybe be out and about in the evening, so we don't really care.
Do you think, I would say that everyone has to have a TV?
I think they probably all do, but I've certainly seen ones where the TV is smushed in one of the bedrooms because there's really not even a, some of the places we've looked at in New York are so small that they're just kind of squeezing it in there.
Sure.
Not necessarily everyone that can sleep there can comfortably sit and watch a movie.
Okay, that's fair.
That makes sense. So in our place, though, we wanted that to be the situation, but it is a small living room, and we tried to do a couch and a chair configuration. So this kind of comes back to my whole thing of using graph paper and actually knowing exact measurements. I actually was able to make little furniture because, hey, we live 3.5 hours away from this place. So if I choose this couch and it's like slightly too big, I'm going to be in trouble. And if I'm like putting a chair over here, I want to be able to see how much like space is there actually around there.
Yeah, and I think it's important too when you're buying furniture. Most of the time these days you're not even able to buy it local.
Right.
So trying to send it back is going to be a huge pain in the butt.
Very difficult. And if you're not in the same location, having graph paper and having little baby furniture.
I mean, here's the reality. Even if this was down the street, you would have graph paper and little baby furniture.
That is true. But if it's further away, you should have it. Okay. All right. So the reason why this matters is because we realized that configuration-wise, it was better to put an L-shaped couch in there rather than a couch and a chair because there wasn't going to be a lot of room. Okay. But when you think about that, like 6 people sitting on that, because it's kind of a small couch. It's a small, not one of those massive L couches. It's a small L couch. So what we did is we did the L couch. then we did a chair across the room that is light and easy to move. So it could be moved then to watch television, because right now the way it sits on the same wall as the TV. But if I would have put a big heavy chair there, moving that, they could break it, they could hurt somebody, they could hurt their back. I wanted it to be a really easy chair, comfortable chair that could be picked up and moved. The other thing that we did, and I love this, I do it in my own house, and then I think it's great for this kind of scenario, is we bought what I call cubes. They're literally like little square cubes that are...
They're like cube-shaped stools.
Yeah, they're like stools. Stools would also be an option. I like the cubes. But the nice thing about that is that you can kind of move them around very easily. You can, if you wanted to play a game around a coffee table, people can, put
Sure.
them on the coffee table. So having some movable furniture, some furniture that's flexible for people, I think can be really important. Okay, next.
What was that question? I forgot.
That question is, where will they watch TV as a group?
Boy, you can get a lot of answers from just that question.
Right. So, I'm thinking about that. Where are they going to sit? How is that going to be comfortable? Where are they going to put their feet? So the cubes can also be ottomans.
How much you would charge to set up somebody's Airbnb.
Oh,
50,000 bucks?
Oh my gosh. Probably. No, it's a lot of work. I've spent innumerable hours on this. Okay. So the next question is, will they cook? Will the people that are coming to your Airbnb cook at the place?
Meaning, likely. Will they likely
cook? It's hard to know what people will do, but you have to think in terms of what is the full spectrum of people that are going to stay here, and what is the likelihood. In our case, it was yes, people are going to cook. Okay?
And is that because you think people are going to actually cook there, or is it because you knew you were going to cook there? And
both. That's definitely both. I knew I was going to cook there. I also feel like Leavenworth is the kind of place where people will kind of hunker down in the evening, potentially. I mean, people do walk around, but even in summertime, they close, downtown closes at 7 o'clock.
Well, here, you have to remember, though, the year that you're in as you record this is on the back end of COVID.
Right.
And I will say that from some of the owner meetings that I've been a part of, people being in their units has been much higher than it has ever in the past. So the garbage, for example, at the condo association tripled or quadrupled in the number of times they had to have the garbage truck come pick up.
Right.
Because even those that are buying food out were bringing it back.
Right.
So I think you have to take that into consideration as well.
So the answer to my question was absolutely yes. I think it's possible that people are going to cook. I don't think they're going to cook every single meal, because there's lots of restaurants really close, and people are going to want to try foods out, and everyone likes to go and get their German sausage and all of that stuff. So I wanted to make sure I had plenty of cooking extras, not only for them but for myself. And I decided to do an Instapot, because one of the things that you have to understand is that there are a lot of communities where rice is a staple. So a rice cooker or an Instapot, which was what I decided to do, I think is really important, because
the beautiful thing about an Instapot is that it is a rice maker as well,
exactly.
right? So you get to knock out both of those.
And I did something like a hand mixer and a blender. People love to do margaritas when they're on vacation, so that's a great thing to have in the Airbnb. So my last question that we're going to go over today is, where will they sleep? Okay, that's very simple. For us, we had 2 bedrooms. Each bedroom held 2 people, but we wanted to have more people than that. But it is really small. There was not a place where we could put bunk beds in a little corner over here or anything. So what we did is we opted to get 2 really nice rollaway beds. And the great thing about that is they're nice and sturdy. We have a great place where we can store them in the master bedroom closet. And then people can pull them out, and we kind of have a little bit of information in the guest book that says, when you do the rollaways, take the coffee table, move that out of the way, and both of them will fit right in the center of the living room.
I'm actually and I know we're kind of wrapping up here, but I think that it might be smart for us to actually get those rollaways set up and take some pictures of them at some point and put those in there, because then as people see that, because you and I both know there are a lot of people out there like you that don't actually read the guest book.
True. Very true.
Anyway.
Thanks so much for being here this week, you guys. We will come back next week. Reach out to us, 509-62-HOUSE.